Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix. I'm Benji Messer, our music director. My pronouns are he, him. I'm pleased to have our choir with me today in service, along with our new accompanist, Arsen Nalbandian. Our opening hymn for this whole month, is the African American spiritual There Is More Love Somewhere. Please rise in body or spirit, and let's sing together. Here we go. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. And more hope. More peace. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. And more joy. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere. And more love. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. Please remain standing while we light our chalice. Just going to try that today.
Good morning. I'm John Palumbo. My pronouns are he, him, and I am honored to be your worship associate today. So please join me as we recite our covenant and my daughter Giovanna lights our chalice. If you're watching remotely and have a chalice with you, please light it with us. Love is the doctrine of this congregation, and service is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to share our strength in fellowship, thus do we covenant. Please be seated.
Welcome, sweet ones. Welcome home and welcome to worship. In all of the mysterious wonders that make up your uniqueness, and in all of the beautiful traditions that shape your spiritual life, you are welcome here. I'm Brigitta Vieyra. My pronouns are she, her, and it is an honor to serve as your ministerial intern. Reverend Christine Dance is away from the pulpit this week. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix strives to be a spiritual community for our time, one that is theologically diverse, radically inclusive, and justice-centered. If you are new here, we are so glad you found us and hope that in this community you can experience the warmth and love of this congregation. Each Sunday is a little bit different here, so please do come back a few times to get to know us. Here at UUCP, we put our mission in action when we discover together what it means to be human. We have a couple of announcements about the different ways we are humaning together by embracing joy and defining our future. For those of you who want to learn more about joining our community and potential membership, next Saturday, October 7th, there is a starting point class. And today, after the service, starting at noon in Annex B and also on Zoom for all of you online, Vince Waldron is hosting an adult faith program called Fatherhood, a spiritual commitment for our time. And now, I invite you to settle in as I read our singing bowl, inviting it to draw you deeper into the present moment and deeper into listening.
Join us as we explore what it means to be a people of deep listening. Who We Listen To is Who We Become by Reverend Scott Taylor. Sometimes it can be so loud, hard to hear those voices you once knew so well, voices that knew you so well. It's said silence heals us, but silence also holds us together. So pause while we can, while this sweet space gives us room to listen, to hear. The echoes of memories that make us whole, the pain of others that reawakens our hearts, the beauty of wild woods that want us back, or deserts. We don't just listen for clarity and guidance, we listen to become larger. Those voices calling us home are our home. We don't have conversations, we are our conversations. We must remember, friends, who we listen to is who we become. I now invite our children to come forward for together time. Those that are young and young at heart.
If you are a child now, or if you were a child ever, you are, of course, welcome in this space. Good morning, everyone. I'm Katie Resendez, and I'm the Director of Children's Ministry here at UUC Phoenix. And I just noticed something, and it's a shift in our community that I want to take a moment to honor, is that today we have more high schoolers than any other age group of kiddos. And that's pretty phenomenal considering they're coming up on fall break. A lot of them are about to or have just taken midterms. And it's also the height of a lot of sports season. So thank you all for showing up for your community. We like seeing you, and we're glad you're here, and we're glad that this is a place you want to come. So thank you, thank you. Okay, a few announcements. 1, if you are or have a family member who is or take care of a person who is between the ages of 12 and 14 and you would like them to experience coming of age through UUCP, our first introductory meeting is on this Friday from 5 to 7 p.m. and there'll be an email going out with announcements, but your family needs to be registered for children's ministry in order for you to get those announcements. Also, this session is going to be about how we know ourselves and how we think about ourselves and self-identify, and we want to invite everyone. So if you're interested in coming as an adult, as someone who isn't attached to a coming-of-age kiddo, please feel free to come. Email me so I know you'll be there so we can prepare enough chairs, but you are more than welcome to join us. So that's number 1, is Friday, coming of age. Number 2, everyone who is interested in or has been volunteering with children's ministries, please join us on Saturday from 10 to 2:30. That is a very long stretch of time for a very long training in which I will give you lots of textbooks and lecture at you the entire time. Luckily, Benji will be there and teach us some songs, and some other people will do things that aren't just lecturing. But it is very important that we all learn how to keep our community safe and that we work on what our pedagogy is around why children exist in this community and why they exist in general. So that's this coming Saturday from 10 to 2:30. If you can only make part of it, come let me know. That's great. And then lastly, after service next Sunday is a session called, originally it was called What the Hell is Children's Ministry? I think we changed that. It's something like that. But it's the whole overview and orientation for the year, all of our programming lists so you can hear what's going on when and how different programs are working. And that's so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of next week, we have events every single day. Okay? Great. Give me a second to recenter myself, and then I'll tell you a story. Ani was born in a village in a very, very cold and frozen place. And half of that year, it was light out all day long. There was no sunset. There was no sunrise. There was just sunshine the whole time. And many people think that that means it was wonderful and great, but we live in the desert, and we know that too many days of too much sunshine makes you too grouchy. But luckily, where Ani lived, half of the year it was dark. Very, very dark. And as a young child, a toddler even, Ani would wander outside in the dark, be it morning or afternoon or night, and look up at the sky and see the most amazing thing. Purples and greens and whites, sometimes running across the sky like a river, sometimes in stripes streaking back and forth. And Ani was amazed. And this is something that didn't just exist beginning when she was a toddler. It had existed for thousands and thousands of years before, so her community had stories about it. And sometimes the stories affected the way people would treat her. She would be out wandering underneath the sky so shiny and beautiful, and someone would come and say, Ani, come inside, come inside. That's a bad omen, something is happening, come in, be safe. Or someone would say, Ani, those are the ancestors, you have to talk to them, yell them your wishes, tell them what you want. And they would yell and shout and shout. And other people would say, when we see it, you have to bring it gifts. And they would lay out food and blankets and everything outside under this beautiful shining sky. And now Ani thought all of those things were interesting, but that there was something missing. Because the sky was beautiful to look at, but when she was alone and could make herself be still and settle her breath, she not only saw the aurora borealis in the sky, but she could hear it. And if you hold your hand to your ears and squeeze tight so that your fingers make a popping noise and a scratching noise and almost a shing shing at the same time, and do it kind of slow, that's what she could hear. And on particularly cold nights, that shing shing would sound like music, like a wind chime. Ding, choo, choo. And she would try to tell the grown-ups in her little toddler ways, no, but as we often do with the littlest ones, no, come on, hurry up, let's go inside, we have the next thing to do. As a lot of people do, Ani grew up. And as she got older, she started to hang out with the artists. And the artists saw the beauty in the sky and tried to repeat it in the fabric and in paintings and in music. And they would have these huge bacchanalian parties all day long, 24 hours straight, celebrating the colors in the sky, making so much noise. And Ani enjoyed that. But she would say to her friends, there's more. It's not just the colors. It's not just the shimmering. It's a sound. And her friends would be like, oh, what did you have to eat? And are you saying that the sky isn't beautiful enough? Are you saying we have to look deeper and further? Just enjoy what's there and celebrate it, and just know that those colors are there for us to create more. And Ani agreed that the art was important and the beauty was important, but that there was something more. So she would often find herself wandering off from the party and looking up to the sky and listening for that sound. That crackle, that dry, that ching, ching. As she got older, she got very busy. And honestly, on those days and days and days that were dark and dark and dark, she didn't even look up at the sky. There was just too much to do. And everyone around her was doing the same thing. Oh yeah, it's always like that. It's been like that for thousands of years. No worries, whatever. And she would try to remind herself to stop and listen, but it was so hard to make time. And it was hard to remember the sound. And it was hard to remember if it was true, and if she had really ever heard it. When she was an old woman, she spent a lot of time sitting inside because it was very cold where she lived. And she didn't have so much busy work to do. And she was done creating art for a time, and she'd do it once in a while, but it didn't fill her days and nights like before. And toddling out in the cold didn't sound fun either. So she would sit. But she was a highly regarded elder, and lots of people would come visit and talk to her, and she would tell them stories. And sometimes she would just talk and talk. And it was just a way to be part. She wasn't getting anything accomplished. She wasn't focusing everyone or being the inspiration to the community. It was just a way to be part. And it was fairly peaceful. But there was one little boy who would always come and sit right by her and listen to her. Like, do you have any stories today? Do you have any stories today? And she would try to think of stories to tell him. And she would tell him all sorts of things about the time she went to the grocery store, about the shoe she lost, about whatever she could remember. And he loved her stories, and she knew that he specifically loved her stories. So she wasn't surprised one day when he came running in and said, Miss Ani, come, I heard, listen, come. And she was like, oh dear, okay. She got on her coat, she got on her blanket, she put on her boots and went and followed. And what she found outside, a little further from the village, was tons of wires and boxes and electronics, and she wasn't unfamiliar with these things. She had a computer, but she didn't know why they would be all laying out. And she walked up to some of the people, and the little boy said, this is Miss Ani, I told you so. And the man said, "Hi, Miss Ani, I told you so. My name is Dr. Such and Such." And turns out Dr. Such and Such was a researcher. And so Miss Ani had found herself in a time of life with the scientists and those who observe. And she said, what are you observing? What are you studying here?" And Dr. Such and Such said, "Well, what we have found is that if we hook up a receiver to receive very, very low frequencies while the aurora borealis is shining, we can hear..." And before he could say the rest of her sentence, she looked at him. A huge smile came on her face. She looked at the little boy, and she burst out laughing so hard. And it was a laugh about being funny. It was a laugh of amusement. It was a laugh of release. It was a laugh of knowledge. And it was a laugh of validation. That what she remembered, that sound from a long time ago, was truly real and was there. And so she said, yes, tell me, you can hear them." And he said, "Yes, but you'll have to put on these headphones." And she said, "I might, but you don't have to." And so they walked together out a bit further where there were less people. And she put on the headphones. And he stopped and looked up. And they settled their breath. And together they listened to the ruff and crackle and shing, 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 and felt the magic of listening to something together. Thank you.
Each week, we practice generosity as a source of affirming our values by splitting our offering plate with UUCP and a local organization that shares our values. Collectively, we can make our offering more than just a habit. We can make it into an opportunity for recommitment, a recommitment to this place and to its people who help create a more just and loving world. For October of 2023, our Share the Plate partner is Black Lives of Unitarian Universalists, or BLUU, which is committed to expanding the power and capacity of Black UUs within our faith. Half of the money that BLUU gets will be going to a housing project in Minneapolis to sponsor bringing affordable housing to Black and Indigenous families. Stable and affordable housing is a way to ending the carceral state, build up wealth in families, and create stability in the community. When we listen to the leadership of BLUU and bless one another with giving, we point ourselves toward ways of being that invest in collective flourishing. May we be committed to using the gifts you give today to make a difference in our world. Ushers, thank you for your willing hands in this ritual of sacred giving.
Beautiful. It is an important practice in this community that we make time to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person has value, and every person's experience matters. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or with tears, all of you belongs. If you are on Zoom and would like to share a joy or sorrow, please type them in the chat, and I will read it out loud. And for those of you in person who would like to share a joy or sorrow, there are always cards in the back of the sanctuary. As we open this time to amplify our joys and sorrows with communal care, let us center ourselves in a moment of stillness. This morning we begin with the joy of the things that are found that we may not have known are missing. If anyone left their cell phone at the welcoming desk, joyful news for you, it is up there. This is how we care for one another. Also, McCallsett shares that Scott Forrester, she writes this: Dad has been having random, troublesome health concerns, and it turns out it was valley fever. It is a joy, though, to make sure that he is on the path of healing. Indeed. From Joan Gale online, Joan shares a joy that Bill Snowden is doing well and may come home this week. Joan Gale also shares that Carla Meske, who has photos of the sky hanging in the sanctuary, had a pacemaker placed in her heart and is doing well. A sorrow from our community comes from Sylvia Sharma. Sylvia shares that her sister Lisa celebrated the life of her husband of 26 years, who recently passed away from cancer. We keep Philip Wong in our hearts. Jessica Pineda shares online, please send all good thoughts, comfort, and positivity, whatever we can spare. The little baby she has 3 more weeks to cook, with the hope that mama's body will manage the discomfort better than it has been. Jessica, we are with you. Jan Kaplan shares online a joy and a gratitude for Bonnie and Ed for organizing a lovely UUCP camping weekend in Flagstaff. They are on their way home and share the joy of camaraderie, laughs, and great conversation. Let us take a moment to just feel the joys and sorrows that are in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. Let us deeply listen with a moment of prayer. Spirit of life and love, we gather in profound gratitude. Gratitude for recovering from fever. Gratitude for those of us looking out for one another, be it sending best wishes for babies, discovering lost items, celebrating the gift of camping together. We also gather in joyful celebration for those of us who were ill coming home and those of us still not well receiving care. And we also gather in solemn reverence for the things that are difficult in our lives, the challenges that lie ahead, for grief, which weighs heavy on us all from time to time. Spirit and life and love, guide us. Guide us into listening and listening deeper still. For all the joys and sorrows of our lives, we can listen and be moved to love. Amen. And now I invite us into a collective practice of deep listening. Today's mindfulness practice is going to use this seating bowl as our meditation focus. So let us begin by relaxing, settling into the present moment. Find a posture that supports you in a sense of comfort, yet also wakefulness. Take a moment to notice the breath coming in on an inhalation and going out on exhalation. Notice the simple inflow and outflow happening moment to moment. You may want to close your eyes or soften your gaze, whatever is most comfortable for you. And now, very gently, allow that breath to go into the background of your awareness. And in the foreground, open your ears and become aware of what you are hearing. I am going to ring our meditation bell a few times. All you have to do is simply absorb your attention into its sound. And with each toll of the bell, no special breathing or mantras are needed. Just simply let your awareness flow with each tone. as this last bell rings, bring your awareness from hearing back to all forms of listening. Breathe in, breathe out, arrive in yourself, arrive to the present moment. May you stay open to the sounds and vibrations that bring you back home.
Alexander James is a singer-songwriter from St. Paul, Minnesota. They're queer and transmasculine and wonderful. And I met them at a songwriters camp last summer. And I heard them perform this next song. And I said, do you know that you've written an anthem for choirs to sing in Unitarian Universalist congregations? And they said, no. I said, may I have permission to arrange it for our choir? And they said yes. So I hope you enjoy. This is by Alexander James.
Of stardust, we are miracles of chance. We are sparks in cosmic darkness. We are laughing as we dance. Listen. Listen, children, listen. Breathe. Listen. Listen, children, listen. Breathe. We are singularly stunning. We are particles of glow. We are complicated beings. We are learning as we go. Listen. Listen, children, listen. Listen. Listen, children, listen. We are beautifully broken. We are powerful and whole. We are strongest in our softness. We are longing to be known. Listen, children, listen. Breathe. Listen. Listen, children, listen. Breathe. Listen. Listen, children, listen. Breathe. Listen. Listen, children, listen. Breathe.
We want to extend gratitude to Worship Associate Bill Snowden for shaping today's worship theme. Bill was not able to be physically present with us today, but he was able to write a reflection about the gift of deep listening and gave me permission to read it on his behalf. So I will share with you his reflection and then my own. And in Bill's words, one of my earliest memories related to deep listening was during my time as a freshman in college. I lived in the freshman dorms, and I was recruited to help some of the freshman football players with their math homework. One evening, one of the guys who lived down the hall and was part of our first floor, a friendship group, approached me about helping him with his homework. He had heard that I was a tutor, and he was desperate to complete a problem with his homework due the next day. The catch was that my friend was a pre-med student for dental science, a subject which I had no knowledge. I agreed to help with the understanding that he would tell me exactly what he needed to do. I paid close attention to what he said, occasionally asking a clarifying question. Within 15 to 20 minutes, he got a grin on his face. He had figured out the answer to his problem. I hadn't heard the term deep listening at the time, but it's clear to me that establishing a connection with him, focusing on him and his words, allowed him to frame his homework assignment so that he could solve the problem himself. Looking back on this incident tells me deep listening offers us the gift of human connection. And now my reflection. I'm going to share a scenario that I have repeated many times in my 23 years of marriage to Gita. Hi, Gita.
She's a saint.
Accurate. Gita comes to me clearly upset about some issue or problem, sometimes mundane, sometimes serious. I listen in a way that I believe is really good, and I offer a solution, only to find myself suddenly with an even more upset wife. It has taken me most of those 23 years to figure out why my solutions are not always taken with gratitude. You see, I'm a man raised in the 1980s, so I've been conditioned to believe it is my responsibility to solve all the problems my wife might ever face. So when Gita comes to me clearly upset, I listen very clearly with my ears, but my brain's already jumping ahead, working on solving the problem so I can be the hero and save the day. It has taken me an embarrassingly long time to learn how to truly listen. These days, when Gita comes to speak to me, I make sure to not only listen with my ears, but also with my eyes, and most importantly, with my brain, to truly be in the moment with her, not preparing for the next moment.
We all have a Genesis story. Not just who we are, but how we came to be. In this episode of my life, I have been writing and reading and writing and reading and reading and writing about all things UU ministry. And somehow I am supposed to maybe, eventually, somehow, locate myself and my own ministry in this complex constellation of our 11-syllable faith called Unitarian Universalism. Whew. The genesis of my ministry has taken place during a global rupture of turmoil and disruption, a time of the COVID-19 pandemic, rising authoritarianism, and catastrophic climate crisis, a time of economic polarization and widening wealth inequities, a time of insurrections and aggressive anti-Semitism, with bans on books and bans on reproductive health care. A time of protest for the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and other Black lives lost. A time of anti-immigrant and anti-trans rhetoric that has fueled fatal violence. A time of mass shootings and the Me Too movement. There is a phrase for those of us who entered ministry at this time. They say, I have been formed in the storm. But my body has another name for it: holy rage. And from that chaos, confusion, and cataclysmic storms that we all have been formed in this time, a nagging voice, the one that is experiencing that holy rage in my body, has been anxiously fretting, usually in a very shaky tone of voice, saying, do something, say something, do something. Say something. I suspect some of this aching desire to tend to the hurt in this world comes from the spiritual and moral scaffolding of our faith. Because as UUs, we believe in deeds, not creeds. This means that our faith and spirituality is deeply incarnational and based in this world here and now, not trying to get to or avoid going to someplace else. As UUs, our collective call is for a communal salvation, a world of interwoven liberation and wholeness that knows in our bones our destinies are inseparable. A salvation that can be found in our daily actions. As UUs, we experience hope as a spiritual discipline committed to taking action for love and justice in a time that demands staying responsive and relevant to the needs of our time. And beloveds, there are so many unmet needs at this time. So no wonder my UU heart kept beating and bleeding. Do something, say something. And it took some time for my heart to realize that the sacred task of finding and sharing the liberal prophetic voice of my faith, the voice that makes me a UU, the one that can say something to do something, that voice needed my ears. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition has historically been a very verbal one, and it has not hesitated to speak out with holy rage at the moral injustices across time. UUs have been practicing social justice in the public square by engaging in public witness for generations. And my UU heart really wants to honor this legacy. So I wanted to know, how did our faith ancestors in our family tree find the courage to do something, to say something, to boldly assert the prophetic voice to resist injustices around them? And I have been surprised to find that prophetic leadership is less about public speaking. It is more about public listening. The Unitarians and the Transcendentalists in our faith family tree rooted their social justice activism in the sacred work of speaking from their truest selves, the part of us that has inherent dignity or divinity. And to do this, they tuned in and engaged in the spiritual practice of deep listening. Deep listening that was not only a tool for discernment, but actually a transformative place. A place where embedded complex knowings, curiosities, and emerging answers within a community opens us up and can sustain us with spiritual wisdom. A place where deep healing and love and justice can abide. I long to know that place. And I long for you to know that place. And I long for us to become that place. So I wonder, beloveds, what if putting our faith in action doesn't only start with doing something and saying something? What if embodying our faith starts with deep listening? Who would we listen to? And how would we hear it? One of the most prophetic spiritual activists and moral anchors for the 20th century was American Baptist preacher and Black Southern theologian Howard Thurman. As a contemplative mystic, Howard Thurman insisted that at the heart of all social activism was this transcendent place, a place we can all spiritually nurture, a place that is spacious enough to be human, to be able to hear ourselves and hear one another in the collective call to seek the wisdom that we need to solve our most pressing, complex, systematic ills. Deep listening is that place. Howard Thurman founded the Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples in 1944, which was the first interracial and interfaith congregation in the United States. There he urged his congregants to listen to the sound of the genuine by engaging in the spiritual practice of deep listening, a practice he famously expanded upon at the 1980 commencement address to Spelman College. These are Thurman's own words, in which he consistently modeled and molded his ministry. There is in every person something that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine. There is something in you that waits and listens to the sound of the genuine in yourself. Nobody like you has ever been born, and no one like you will ever be born again. You are the only one. Cultivate the discipline of listening to the sound of the genuine in yourself. There is also something in everybody that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in other people. I must wait and listen for the sound of the genuine in you. Now, if I hear the sound of the genuine in me, and if you hear the sound of the genuine in you, it is possible for me to go down in me and come up in you, so that when I look at myself through your eyes, having made that pilgrimage, I see in me what you see in me. The wall that separates and divides will disappear, and we will become one. Because the sound of the genuine makes the same music. The sound of the genuine makes the same music. Beloveds, we are living in a time when it has been very difficult to hear that music. The current conditions of massive inequality have become barriers to hearing the sound of the genuine, both inside ourselves and in one another. It is hard to hear the music of our faith when our hearts are weary and breaking from all that loud noise, of violent, trauma-inducing fear-mongering, and oppressive devastation. Recommitting ourselves to theologically grounding our liberal prophetic voice begins with deep listening. For who and what we listen to is who and what we become. Deep listening is a ministry of presence that is available and accessible to us all. As a spiritual practice, tuning in to the sound of the genuine moves us beyond the people that we wish to become. It actually guides us to the places we need to co-create a more healing and liberating world. A place where love and justice abides. A place where the broken and grief-stricken can lament and heal from the injustices and suffering in our world. a place where compassion can be offered, so that we each can speak our own truth and discover new possibilities of what could be. Possibilities that connect us to our wholeness and our holiness. Possibilities where the sound of the genuine can surface in a transcendent way and can sing. Unitarian Universalists, we are called to be a people of deep listening. To do this, we must create and cultivate hospitable conditions so we pay attention to our bodily sensations and call on deeper ways of knowing to discern the present and honor our interdependence. As a spiritual practice, we collectively engage in deep listening when we enter ritual time by lighting a chalice, be it for a Sunday worship, at a small group gathering, or in a coming-of-age program. Outside our UU spaces, deep listening can happen when we find ourselves communing with the trees, reading a beautiful poem at a recovery meeting, being moved to tears when listening to a psalm. We find deep listening when we meditate, do yoga, and pray. As a co-creative sacred encounter, deep listening is any spiritual disposition of listening to that mysterious presence in our lives, the one that transports us to a place where deep wisdom reveals itself, the place where we can tune in enough to hear the music behind the words in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. We need this place if we are going to do something and say something, because we need justice making that will stay steady in the storm and anchored in our faith. For it was there, in that place of deep listening, where I experienced a shift in my own genesis, to not just use, but actually hear the prophetic voice inside. Being formed in the storm threatened to drown out the sound of the genuine in me, with moral panic shouting, "The end must be here." But with deep listening, I found another place, a place that had a voice, calming my fears and quenching my tears, whispering, "The beginning is near. The beginning is near." And that led me here, to all of you, where together we deeply listen to our shared purpose, embodying the values of our 11-syllable faith. May we tune in to the sound of the genuine. May we turn towards one another. Deep listening will take us there, and together we can hear its call, singing. May it be so.
It's a treat to be a stop on your ministerial journey. We close with "Voice Still and Small," the song that Brigitta was quoting, by the Unitarian Universalist minister John Corrado, before we sing, let's listen to the melody once all the way through with the lyrics up so that we can imagine what they might sound like. We don't sing this one a lot. Let's rise in body or spirit. Once more through.
Come and let us listen to one another with coffee. Adult and children's activities begin at noon, and we hope you will meaningfully connect with some coffee in the Johnson Room. Today's closing words are mine. Let us go forth, listening deeply, for the prophetic wisdom of our faith is not only spoken, it is also heard. May we each be the ministry of presence our world so very much needs, and may we do this faithful work together. Go in peace, go in love.